Hello everyone, welcome to Chess Visor. In today's video, I'm going to show you the game played between Alexi Sarana and Arjun Erigasi. So this is the game from round number 3 of the Chennai Grandmasters edition 2024. So without much delay, let's get started. So I have flipped the board already, so we're going to see the game from Arjun's perspective, so we have a better idea. So with the white pieces, Alexis Sarana starts the game with the 1d4, and we are seeing the Nimzo Indian here actually. So in this position, most of the time you might have seen that knight f3 is coming to avoid the Nimzo Indian, but here Alexis Sarana invites or accepts the challenge of Nimzo Indian by playing knight c3, bishop b4, and then pawn to e3. So here I have marked the most common move to take control over the center. Already we are controlling the center by the piece, so it is very common move for us for black to castle and then getting ready to strike in the center either by playing c5 or d5. But in the game, what happened? Arjun chose a different idea, that is b6. This is called the Saint Petersburg's variation of the Nimzo Indian. Bishop to d3 takes control over the same square, and he does the same. Bishop b7, knight f3, and then both players castles on the king side. After that, Arjun plays pawn to c5 and then knight to a4. It looks like a very good move for white at first sight, and sometimes the bishop could be trapped. So that is why in this position, Arjun plays the move c takes d5, paving the way for the bishop. Otherwise, in case if you play some other move, I considered pawn to d6 in this position, just solidifying c5. Even if you play this move, there is no problem because after a3 there is no good follow for your or to trap the bishop. But the idea is, or the problem is, bishop does not have a good scope on the a5 to the e1 diagonal. So going back in this position, he plays c takes d4, paving the way for the bishop back. He could play the bishop to e7 or d6, based on the situation. He plays a3 and then bishop to e7. So here bishop d6 is a very interesting move to consider, because after bishop d6, he takes d4 and then bishop f3. It looks like we are giving up the strong bishop for the knight. The idea is, after this, queen takes f3, knight c6, putting pressure in the center, and then bishop e3, and then the game continues with the pawn e5. So we are going to question the center just by allowing the center, and then we are going to attack the center. So generally, when you play or when you handle the black pieces, that is what you are going to do most of the time when you play the queen's pawn opening, especially Nimzo Indian, King's Indian setup, or even the queen's Indian. So bishop e7 and then e takes d4 was played in the game. Queen c7, developing the queen, and then rook e1. So after rook e1, he plays pawn to d5, finally strikes in the center, and here white decided to push forward with the move c5, gambiting a pawn for the activity or gaining the bishop pair. So going back in this position, if you play c takes d5, black will be able to capture with the knight and have the leave the isolated pawn for white, and later on he is going to target, and he will have the strategy of working against the pawn. So that way he wants to avoid that, I guess. So that's why he plays c5 himself. In that variation, the problem is he is getting a pawn, but Arjun has to give up the bishop here. After queen takes c5, he plays bishop f4, and also there is one interesting move. It's also very natural move to consider, that is b4, gaining the time on the exposed queen. Once the queen drops back, the bishop can develop itself into the excellent diagonal along the dark squares. So going back in this position, after the queen capturing on c5, bishop f4 was played in the game. Queen b6, avoiding any tempo loss by playing rook ac1. So knight to e5 centralizes the knight, and then bishop a6. This is very interesting trade actually, and we should also aware that when your opponent is having the bishop pair, it is actually a wise choice for you to exchange one of them. So that's what here Arjun is doing. So bishop a6, bishop c2, avoiding the same, rook c8, and in this position I was wondering whether black can capture on b2 or not, because most of the time at our level it is very intriguing for us to capture it, or it is very tempting to capture it. So what would happen if I capture the pawn? Let's see. So if I take on b2, queen takes b2, it's already a mistake, because now the problem is he can play this move, rook b1. We are just inviting the useless rook into the game, and not only that, in this position, whether you play queen c3 or queen takes a3, the follow-up move is very clear, that is anyway we are going to move the queen, at least we will capture the pawn. Let's consider that variation. So queen takes a3, the problem is rook b3, wherever you drop the queen doesn't matter, white has a winning attack on the king side. Say for example, the bishops are eyeing on the king side, the knight is centralized, and the b3 rook, the idea of rook b3 is to shift the rook towards the king side and start a winning attack that you cannot defend because you have not developed the pieces properly, and the bishop is looking at a, the empty space, I guess, and the queen has to drop to any inactive squares, I guess. So that is why in this position taking on b2 would be a great mistake. So that is why in this position Arjun plays rook fc8, taking over the the completely open file, and in some variations the bishop will have to be defended with some other piece because the queen has to do something else. So he plays pawn to b4, and then knight c6 was developed. So now Arjun has completed his development. The rooks are connected. Rook c1 was played, and then knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, and then rook to c4. Again, this is very critical moment I want to discuss here, because in this position Arjun allows black to capture on f6 to ruin his pawn structure. So what is the benefit or the idea behind it? Already he has a pawn extra, so it doesn't care about losing one more pawn on h7. So say for example in the game what happened, he immediately accepted the or captured the knight. After g takes f6, he played queen h5, threatening to play bishop into h7 or queen into h7. So he plays king f8, prophylactically moving the king away, and he says you can have the pawn. So bishop to b3, and after bishop b3 he plays rook c6. This is the first mistake from Arjun's side, because he's going to make another 2 or 3 mistakes, which unfortunately or fortunately Alexis Sarana, I should say fortunately Alexis Sarana missed it and allowed Arjun to crash or stay on 2800. So rook c6, and then he played queen takes h7. So in this position bishop takes d5, it's very difficult move to spot. He might have considered it, but for some reason he eliminated this move, I guess. After this capture, if you capture on e takes d5, it looks like there is no problem after this rook captures. But the problem is after queen takes h7, white is completely winning. Say for example your king is kind of exposed, you need to protect the rook, otherwise you are getting the skewer. So king e7, rook e1 check, and then king d6, queen takes f7, and then bishop c8. So the game continues with the winning attack for white. So that is why bishop takes d5 is a very good move in this position. But the problem is it is very natural for us to take on h7. So that's what Alexis Sarana did in this position. So rook c8, doubling the rooks. He takes the time to double up the rooks. So rook c d1, so avoids the trade. Pawn to d4, the second mistake of the game. If you want to pause the video, you can try to find the winning continuation for Alexis Sarana, because this is now a losing blunder. This is an analysis I have taken from, or I took from the game of the day of chess.com. So it says it's a mistake, but it's probably a blunder, because now white has a winning advantage or a winning move to continue. You can pause the video and try to find it. I'm going to show this now. So rook e4. So what is the point of rook e4? He's going to shift the rook towards the g file and try to checkmate the king or win material. And the straightforward threat in the position is to win the pawn. So suppose if you defend the pawn, let's say you play rook d6. This is very natural move to consider, and then rook f4, king e7, and then queen g7, going after the pawn. After f5, and then rook e1, after bishop to d3, and then pawn to g4, completely trying to crash through the position, because now f7 is a huge weakness for black. So this is a winning position for white. So going back in this position, even for black, Arjun would have a lot of options, but all of them are going to be losing moves. So pawn to h4 is a mistake again, so because he missed the chance. So pawn to d3, pushing the pass pawn, and then pawn to h5, and again queen to d4 is the last mistake by the Arjun, because after this move he didn't make any mistake, and this is the last moment for Alexis Sarana to take advantage of this. Again, I want you to pause the video, try to find a winning sequence for white if you want. The same idea here actually is not going to work. That's what happened in the game. So rook e4, but the move is bishop pawn to b5. So pawn to b5 is a brilliant move. So say for example he plays bishop takes b5, let's consider that, and then bishop takes e6. If you accept the pawn sacrifice, then rook e4, rook g4, and then rook g8 is mate. So that is unstoppable, or you have to give up the queen, and that's a winning advantage for white. Otherwise, if you take with the rook in this position, You just give the check on h8 and then king e7, queen takes c8. You are losing the queen. So this is the point of deflecting the bishop away from a6 by giving up the pawn on, or forking the queen, and forking the rook and the bishop. So going back in the game, he played the rook e4 idea. The earlier idea is not going to help him right now. So he plays queen b2, and then he gained the time on the bishop. So the bishop attacks the rook, and the rook goes after the back rank rook. So and it's defended by a check. And then he played a queen to e3. Again, it's a mistake. Now it is like what do you say? Now white has blended. Now black is winning the game, but this time Arjun did not miss the idea. He simply converts the game. It is like move number 31. Another 6 moves he's gonna resign Alexi Sarana. Let's see how. After trading the rook, he plays bishop takes d1, queen c1, forcing the another trade. So he gives the check first, but the problem is rook c7 stops the queen's further attack, but he takes the bishop anyway. So and then takes the bishop with the check, and then h5 pawn with the check. And after king g3, he simply pushes the pawn down and threatening to queen the pawn, and he stops the queening immediately by playing rook d4. But the problem is it's not actually stopping, because queen e5 check wins the rook now. Otherwise, if you in this position, actually Alexis Sarana resigned the game. So if you play rook to f4, and we can simply promote the queen and win the game. So in this position, that's why after 37th move, queen e5 check, Alexis Sarana simply resigned the game. With this win, Arjun Erigesi now climbed to world number 2 spot with a live rating of 2805.6. So it's actually a great achievement already for Arjun, and I'm very sure that he is going to take over Magnus Carlsen in few weeks, I guess. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section below. And also he is leading the tournament along with Amin Tabatabai, actually, because Amin Tabatabai defeated MBL in his game against MVL. So both of them are leading the tournament in Chennai Grandmasters. So let's see what happens in the rest of the 4 rounds. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe Chess Visor for more.